All right, good day, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another LIVETHEFUEL show. So this evening, as I'm recording this, I am excited to bring on, another new guest co-host. For the newer listeners, this is what we do. It's not all about me. It's about the genius behind my co-hosts. And this new co-host for you also happens to be a podcaster. That's how I stumbled across him. But before we dive into that, let me give you more skinny on this guy. He was trekking around the world, I believe. That's why we couldn't really lock him down until now. But he's an award-winning professional climber. So he's got me beat there. Well-recognized filmmaker in the outdoor industry. That's why I'm also a fan. And he works as a producer and director of development with Bedrock Film Works, through which he is able to utilize his extensive logistics, rigging, marketing, media expertise, a whole lot more, guys. I mean, all while maintaining his role as an athlete in the outdoor industry. He's also well connected with a favorite company of mine that I found when I became a wildland firefighter years ago, REI. REI will actually be a chapter in my new book, but there's more behind that as well. So without further ado, I believe I can call him the host of Wildfire, the podcast that helped me find him. This is Graham Zimmerman, our new guest co-host. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, delighted to be here. Psyched you found me.
Do you call hosts? Do you have co-hosts? Is it just host? Because there's two of you. So, right?
Yeah, there are two of us. So it's Jim Aikman and I. He's my business partner and good friend, and we refer to ourselves as co-hosts.
There we go. Okay. Yeah, I every once in a while I got some regular people that always come on the show. Like I bring on a sports psychologist and stuff like that. So I call her my regular guest co-host. But in the end, I'm the host because I found the show. There's a lot of shows like you guys. You just kick it off, man. Two personalities rapping, telling the story, and since we're already kind of geeking out, and that's how I found you, I want the listeners to learn a little bit about that too. But when did you start the Wildfire Podcast project? Because I don't know when it actually got founded. So
well, let's see. So we launched the show in the late spring, early summer of this year, and the whole project itself kicked off probably 6 months before that. So it's pretty interesting because I've worked as a content creator primarily in filmmaking, but also spend a lot of time on podcasts, spend a lot of time taking photos and writing things. And so I'm always looking for new cool ways to engage with content and engage with audiences. And I also do a lot of work in the climate space in terms of climate advocacy. So when I started kind of looking into the whole wildfire story, the whole kind of story of what's going on with wildfires in North America, it's really complex. It's something that you really need a lot of time to dig into the details of. And as you know, podcasting is a great way to share a lot of information. You've got a lot of time, you've got a lot of bandwidth, and so we pivoted that into the podcast space. And I mean, at risk of being a little arrogant, I think it came together pretty well.
Oh, trust me. I mean, I've been podcasting for over 3 years. So was that your first podcast you guys created?
It was,
okay.
Yeah.
So strong words.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I definitely need to give a big old shout out to Evan Phillips, who I think this was his 5th podcast, but he's an audio producer and kind of podcast ninja who's based up in Anchorage. And he wasn't a host on the show, but he was very much a team member and did all of our editing, did a lot of most all of the music, and had a lot of really strong insight. So it was Jim and I's first time making a podcast. We definitely had the wizard in our back pocket. So
it sounds like he was like your ace in the back pocket. Like boom, let's lock it out, and then you realize, when you got the right people on your team behind you, it does make it a heck of a lot smoother. So.
Hey man, I mean, like anything, the team you have is what makes the magic happen. So
I tell people all the time, people come into my studio now here in my home office, and it looks. I just redid it again. I'm always geeking out. I'm adding here, there, just to make it. I'm a geek, whatever. I'm an athletic geek. Maybe you are too. And it's funny because I tell people, when I set the podcast, I didn't do it myself. I reached out to a buddy. I told him what I was going to do, and he said, "Oh, dude, I got a buddy of mine flying in actually in a couple of weeks, and he's an audio engineer." I said, I will fire up the grill. I will cook you guys dinner, swing over. I'll order whatever you want me to order, and let's just put it together.
Love
So
it.
that's what he did. And then we were geeking out with recording off of different microphones. And this is still the same mic that I started the show with, because he's like, man, you sound like a mix between like Barry Manilow and Howard Stern. And I was like, well, that's an interesting hybrid, but if that's true, I'll take it. I mean, love technology. So
that's awesome. I love it.
So obviously we're geeking out about Wildfire, and there's more to you. We will on the show. That's the point. But again, I want to dig into it because for the newer listeners, and why I have fire in my logo, and obviously it's in my wall art that fans have made for me. I got a chance to take a risk since I don't know how much you know about my background, but I hinted on you in the email that, I decided to leave the corporate world years ago and go serve as a hotshot wildland firefighter. And I had no firefighting background. So being able to even land on a hotshot crew was like success in itself. And, I spent 2 years earning my belt buckle. That's what you get. And I have friends of mine to this day, and they're like, wait a minute, you risked your life for 2 years and you got a belt buckle? And it's like, damn nice belt buckle, man. All right.
That's awesome.
That's why I'm intrigued to rap with you today, because I'm like, how deep did he get in? Because again, for the newer listeners, the Wildfire show, it's 8 shows, right? 8 episodes for the first season?
6.
Oh, 6. Okay.
Yeah.
See, there we go. Well, I thought there was an 8-part series. Or no? Or is that the next
6?
series?
No, it was 5 kind of primary episodes, and then one kind of final, basically a bunch of actionables that you can get at.
Okay. Well, I mean, maybe that's why it flew by for me so well. And can we sneak hint that there might be a second season on this show?
Yeah. Okay. Looks like we're gonna do a second season, and we're gonna be kind of expanding the breadth of the show in terms of looking internationally and kind of looking at like some different roles that Wildfire play around the world.
Yeah, and actually for the people hearing this now, you guys really targeted this first season on the tragedies of Oregon and how, there's a lot. I mean, there's this amazing park there that just hadn't had fire in that land for so many years. And this is so common in Wildfire. People don't understand that. And I didn't know until I studied fire science, went to a couple of academies, and then obviously served, that most of the wildfires naturally occurring, especially in the Western US with the drier humidities, they're actually started by Mother Nature. I mean, it's lightning strikes, and they usually are the more dangerous wildfires in these areas that might not have had prescribed burning, or they had canceled prescribed burning, and you've got these fuel beds that have built up over the years and not been managed naturally. And that's why I loved your show, man, because it's like, oh, he's actually getting into that. Good, he's getting into that chapter. Like the next episode, I'm like, yes. I was sitting like, oh, please tell me he digs into this on the next show.
I can't tell you how fired up I am to hear that you enjoyed it that much. I mean, we really put a lot of time into what we covered on the show, and it's tricky because I mean, I guess over the course of the show we had like 2.5 hours of airtime to work with, and which is a lot, but it's a massive subject, and it's a very complex subject, and we focused in on one place geographically because it really gave us a strong story thread, which, as you know, is a really important part of conveying information, is like making sure that you have some strong story to work with, so you can, it kind of acts as a mechanism through which you can provide that kind of core information about a subject. Yeah. And it's also where we live. My business partner and co-host Jim is over in Portland, and I live out in Bend. And so what we're talking about is a place that's familiar to us. And it's really a personal journey of us trying to understand, what's going on with wildfire in this part of the world. And, and I really hope that can relate out to what's going on in California or going on in the desert Southwest, or even, some of the fires
point right now, right? Because
out east.
California's on fire once again as you and I are recording this, and there's 3. I can't stop keeping an eye on all this stuff. Once it's in me. But there's 3 major fires that have been going on over the past week, and for me, this is late season. As a Region 3 guy based out of Arizona, we traveled all over the West. That's what hotshots do. They ship you to all the crazy ones. You're on a rotational cycle, but our season would end by the end of September. Obviously, the Northwest, they would start later and then go later. But everybody's got their different start and end cycles. It's always a 6-month period, until you time out or, you hit that layoff period. So But I never got a chance to fight a fire up in Seattle or in Washington or Oregon. We were on a couple of assignments on the northern edge of California, on that edge of Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
We did Idaho, Montana. I never got a chance to go up to Alaska. So jealous of that one.
Yeah, Alaska had a really big fire season this year as well.
Yeah. It was. They were lucky because it was a wet season, the 2010, 2011 when I served. We as a crew were unlucky because I know this is so weird for people hearing this, but it's like we actually would look forward to fire because that's what we were designed to do, right? That's what we trained to do. You're doing 16 hours a day on the fire line. That's how you get paid. I mean, you don't make good money until you're on fire assignment. So I always thought it was weird when we would sit there like, oh man, let's have another one rip off, man. Let's go. So,
that's how it works.
It is. And the one thing I appreciate about your show's format was you started off with a very polarized subject, just introducing the topic of wildfire. And it's interesting because I dug into that history over the years. I have a bunch of different books here on wildfire that I found, one of which is actually the stories of the fires in 1910, which is how wildland firefighting was created.
Probably the big burn by Timothy Egan.
That's one of them. I do have it. There you go. So you've done your research. I mean, they talk about like the Pulaski, which I have 2 Pulaskis hanging in my garage that I use for mountain biking trail work here back east, because if I'm going to have a trail tool, I got to have the one that I used to swing on the line. And that's one of the oldest, wildland firefighting tools created by Ed Pulaski. So yeah, I'm going to warn the listeners right now, we may be geeking out a lot today. But it's intriguing because I was intrigued to see where the show was going to go, because you dug into one of the episodes. I think it was aired on June 4th, A Natural Phenomenon, ? Loved that title. I looked forward to that episode because I also assumed before I became a firefighter that a lot of these starts were, human caused. And, a big part of your show was this huge polarized debate because specifically the fire you guys really targeted with this first season, was actually started by mankind. It wasn't a natural phenomenon.
Yeah. And it's really interesting. I mean, because a lot of the complexity that we're getting at here is the fact that, we talk about climate change, we talk about smoke in the atmosphere, living out here in Bend, we talk about how we kind of have a smoke season now. It's, it's like, as we move later into the summer and things get hot, it'll get really smoky. And it's this really challenging time because it's, a lot of people live here, like such as myself, so that we can recreate outside. And it's extremely limiting to have a bunch of, smoke and particulate in the air. It's interesting because we say, okay, cool. Like there are more fires because of climate, but in actual fact, it's way more complex than that. It's all related to how we've managed fire, over the last 100 years in this country. Climate change is certainly a component, but the answer is not to stop all the fires and stop all the smoke. Like you were alluding to before, the solutions are actually to manage our forests more effectively so that they can burn naturally, because these forests require fire in order to persist. Yeah. And so it's all about kind of finding balance between we're going to have some smoke that's going to be part of living in Bend, Oregon, but we don't have to have tons of smoke if we don't have these giant fires, which are very destructive. And the way that we do that is through more effective and smarter forestry management.
And there's also time to the season too. So once you guys get this dialed back in, because it takes a few years, depending on the area. Like I don't know how long Bend didn't have prescribed burning within its vicinity. In 2010, early 2010, when I went to an academy that helped me land my job on a hotshot crew in Colorado. Mm-hmm. My instructor from New York that I went, he lived in Colorado, and he said, hey, if you want to get on a hotshot crew, you got to come out to another academy, take some advanced classes, network, connect, and maybe it'll help you get on a crew since you have no firefighting background. So the cool thing was he had a mitigation business on the side. So he would he would prep the lands in the fall and the winter, and then wait until the snow dumped. And so I was out there in January in Colorado. Well, there's snow in Colorado in January. And most of his customers, I stayed for 2 weeks. He let me stay out there for free with him and his wife to help me afford the fire academy better. And he said, dude, just work for me. He said, when you're not in class, he said, I got some stuff to teach you. And we would drive out and then hike up into these remote properties that were, in that what's called WUI, Wildland Urban Interface. WUI is the acronym that I learned at the academy. And you go up and you burn slash piles. But the slash piles are from all the grounds that he had prepped earlier in the year, and thinned everything out to open it up so it was safer, and then would wait until it was a low risk time of year to do the burn off, and then burn those slash piles. And it seemed very managed. But he said, again, there's many areas that have not had management in many decades, and those are those big fuel beds that are very dangerous. So.
Oh yeah, and I think in Central Oregon right now, they've been doing a really good job, and it's very similar management strategy. I mean, we have very similarly have a lot of snow during the winter, which provides a really great season to get rid of that fuel. Mm-hmm. But I think in a lot of places like California, it can be really hard because it's not getting as cold as it used to, and therefore you don't have these seasons when it's safe to set prescribed burns and things like that. So it's in some of these areas they're in a pretty tricky spot.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing. I mean, California, just like Denver, Colorado, is known for their long periods of daylight, right? Sunshine. And that's another big thing from the fire science things, is that people don't realize, when you're a little kid with a magnifying glass and you could focus that sun, and you maybe burn a little bug or something if you're a little geek some people did that. I don't know if I did it or not, I can't remember. But the point is that relative humidity, you could have cooler temperatures, but if the humidity is super low, and that means it's very, very dry, and you have still long periods of daylight, you have great conditions for fire spread, because that's what helps. Yeah. I learned that the hard way too. You can go to sleep, because hot shots, we would camp out there on the side of a mountain with fires, and you wake up in the morning and you'd have that little bit of smoky mist, and then as the sun would rise and you would approach the hottest part of the day, maybe closer to 2 p.m. in the afternoon, that's when things are all woken up. I mean, from 2 to 4, things are ripping. But when you first wake up in the morning, you could be laying right next to a fire that was on fire the day before, and it's just sitting there smoldering and flickering and waiting to kind of awaken with the sun. So
yeah. Oh yeah, totally.
It's
yeah,
cool
I mean,
stuff.
it is all the stories that we dug into about fire and about firefighting. I mean, it is a super dynamic element, and it responds very quickly to environmental changes. And that is, it seems to me that's really the crux of dealing with it is it's not just the fire where it is now, it's where it's going to be an hour from now or 10 hours from now, and how you can get ahead of it and how you can contain it effectively, which is really hard.
It is very hard. And actually, bring me back to that acronym, WUI. When I studied in 2010, I didn't know what that was. Actually, it was 2009 when I took my first classes on it, and then moved out to 2010. But they had just created that course. And people are like, this is a newer course for the curriculum, WUI, Wildland Urban Interface, because the two worlds didn't always have to collide before. What I'm referring to is structure firefighting and wildland firefighting. Wildland firefighters do not protect houses. We're not supposed to. Well, at least we weren't. You can help mitigate the area around the properties, try and slow the chances of spread into that vicinity. But if we would get assigned to a region, we would go through and inspect each property. It's like, is it worth our lives? Is it not? And then you would flag the mailbox and move on. If people had way too much landscaping and they didn't listen to the law about trying to keep stuff away from your building, there's all these things. And they said years ago, WUI wasn't needed because we didn't have the population spread that we now have. And California is a perfect case study of that. People want to get out of the city and they want to keep pushing deeper and deeper into the beautiful countryside. But what you're doing is you're actually increasing your exposure and risk to these wildfires because you're now further out, you're further remote. It's crazy. People don't think about these things.
Well, it requires really, it's kind of at this core level. If you're going to live out close to nature, you have to understand nature. And in a lot of these places in the American West and around the world, fire is a very important and dangerous component of that natural space. And it's something that, just like flooding and landslides and,
which California has a lot of as well.
Totally, yeah. We're
basically
talking about like why California is getting hosed right now. But it's like just understanding like what kind of what you're getting yourself into. Like we don't like when you move out of the urban space, you are moving into a space where you're going to interact with the natural world, and the natural world is not always a particularly kind place.
Yeah. I mean, and then to protect California, they're not the only ones. They just happen to be a really huge state with a lot of areas that are very well exposed. This is why Cal Fire exists, because California is so prone to wildfires because they are so big and they are so exposed and they are so dry and they're so populated. That's why they have such a huge budget, and they literally call it Cal Fire. And California manages most of their wildfires themselves. But they have an impressive Air Force, Water Patrol. I mean, they have everything that the federal government has, which I served with. But in the end, they still end up having to pull us in, for reinforcements when the time is right. But for oftentimes earlier in the fire seasons and stuff, they got everything on lock on their own. I mean, they're just rolling with it. They've got a good handle. So they try to.
They've got they've had to figure it out because
it's a very expensive budget,
right? Oh yeah, that's a big.
But even Colorado, like you were talking about Oregon, Colorado was the same way. I mean, 2010, outside of Boulder, Colorado, I got to fight on a fire called the 4 Mile Canyon Complex. You ever been out to Colorado?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So just over the mountain ridge from Boulder, behind the Flatirons, there's a whole valley back there. It's real skinny and beautiful little like secondary homes, or for some people, they're primary homes. And they're very small little cabins and stuff. But that development was called the 4 Mile Canyon Complex. Totally. And that sucker ripped off in 2010 because this was at the end of our fire season. We got shipped up there. And I remember because I never seen a motor, like a old Jeep Wagoneer motor. It looked like a puddle of molten metal from like the Terminator movie. You're walking up and the entire earth is just scorched off. There's no property left. I mean, you might see some crumbled up cinder blocks from the structure, and then you see a burnt chassis of a vehicle, and there's no rubber left, just the metal from inside the tire. And then you see this shiny surface, and you walk up and you're like, oh, that was the motor block. Like the entire motor melted into a puddle.
Yeah.
That's how hot some of these fires get.
Yeah, particularly, and it's like in a lot of these fires don't naturally get that hot, like in like the natural cycle, and it's because these fuel buildups that you get these like exceptionally hot fires that aren't really that great for the environment. They're not like fire. Kind of in its natural state in these forests is very restorative, is very important. Like ponderosa pine cones actually, they like require fire to actually open the seed pods. But then when you get a lot of fuel buildup, you end up with much more fuel that can burn a lot hotter, and it becomes something that's more destructive. And you get things that are that hot, because you can imagine if it's melting an engine block. It's really not that great for the soil.
I was just in Colorado last week, and I was in Boulder, and I happened to take a detour out there with my wife because she's like, "Where are we going?" And I said, "I want to see if this canyon has regrown in the past 9 years," and it's still pretty barren because it burned that hot in there. And what you just said, because you actually brought that up on your show, and a lot of people don't realize that there are natural species on this planet like the ponderosa pine, big, beautiful, very thick barked trees that are all over Arizona, Colorado, even northern New Mexico. I'm not sure, does that breed of tree also exist in Oregon? The ponderosa?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we've got lots of ponderosa around here.
So they're big,
they're awesome trees.
Yeah. And if you have casual fire ripping through there, even if it moves fast, you want it to move fast. You don't want to stall and just sit there and super nuke off. You'll get a little black charring on the outer part of the bark. But then it's like, I'm good. And plus, to your point, yes, it activates the seeds, and actually that allows them to literally grow new trees naturally in Mother Nature. You get the temp too hot.
Something else that we didn't really get into in the show, this is kind of much more of a personal thing, but these forests like we have in Central Oregon, these ponderosa forests, where you have a pretty clear underbrush and just these amazing big trees. Like they're amazing forests. And it's like for the fire clears that stuff out. But when you have these forests with a bunch of dead junk in there, that fuel is like not like, it kind of makes the forests a less I don't know, must have been a nice place to hang out too.
You can't hike through, walk through.
The benefits of having these like naturally these forests with like a natural fire cycle in them, like it makes for like a nicer place to hang out and that kind of thing.
And that's exactly what you're doing, because you have like medium-sized trees trying to steal life literally from the more mature trees. And that's why there's actually what's called thinning projects, because when we had a slow part in the fire season, we would go through and thin areas, especially near roads, to help dissipate the risk of a fuel bed existing right up on a road. That way, God forbid a fire did get started, it could burn through the forest naturally like it would do, but you don't want to slam the road and then jump onto the other forest over there that was, there was nothing wrong with it. So we do lots of these hiking and thinning projects. The point was, you want those trees to thrive on their own, but if it's so heavily choked up, there's photosynthesis, there's sunlight, there's water, everything is robbing from Peter to pay Paul. So these natural thinning out processes by wildfire help keep those forests healthy. So just like you're saying.
Totally. Yeah.
And they're more beautiful. so
absolutely.
So let's do a segue. I mean, I tell everybody we'll have all this linked in the show notes on LIVETHEFUEL.com. You're gonna go subscribe to Wildfire. You're gonna listen to it, and that way, when the second season comes out, you'll be ready to rock like I am, because I'm all subscribed. I've already listened to every single episode like 3 times. So
that's awesome.
I might be a super fan.
Cool.
So, now I want to dive in a little more behind you, man, because I knew you and I were going to geek out. And right before you started the show, you mentioned obviously the pro climbing. And I want to give people more behind the scenes why you guys do what you do, because not everybody can just say, you know what, I'm going to start a podcast on Wildfire. Oh, and get it sponsored by REI, which is SCORE, because they're a great company. But part of that is because of the people you surround yourself with, right? The people that you connect with. And I truly believe that, because I've had to learn that over the years, that we have a choice of who we surround ourselves with. There's lots of famous quotes out there that reinforce this, but obviously the tragedy in Oregon triggered this, but your lifestyle helped keep you around all of this. You being a pro climber. I mean, what did you do before climbing? What kept you in that outdoorsy market?
Gosh, my origin story is kind of all over the place, but I started climbing in high school, and
Nice.
and I was originally born in New Zealand, from New Zealand originally, and then moved to Seattle when my folks moved there when I was 4 or 5.
Okay.
And so I started climbing when I was in high school. Kind of got exposed to it through skiing and snowboarding on the volcanoes just outside of Seattle there. And by the time I was 18, I was pretty clear that what I wanted to do was get into hard mountain climbing. And it's kind of hard to pin down precisely what attracted me to it, but kind of the easy answer really is that it's a pretty amazing combination of mental and physical exertion in one of the most beautiful places imaginable.
I'm with you.
And
it's a big part of what's behind Live the Fuel. So keep going. I'm loving it.
Totally. Yeah. It's like, I mean, for whatever reason, it's just turned, pretty quickly turned into my favorite thing to do. And so I moved down to New Zealand, attended university down there, studied glaciohydrology. And
now there's something you want to say 5 times fast. Glacial hydrology.
how water flows over, through, and under glaciers. Basically, a lot of it is associated with how they actually move. And and so I studied that down there while essentially cutting my teeth in the Southern Alps. And the Southern Alps of New Zealand are a pretty amazing mountain range. They're not super tall. The highest peaks are between like 12 and 14,000 feet, I think. I could be a little bit off.
Now, the
there.
shot that I'm sharing for our video watchers on YouTube, this is, ladies and gentlemen, you'll be able to, again, this will all be in the show notes, GrahamZimmerman.com. I'm on the About page. Is that, where's that picture from?
So this photo is, this is the first ascent in the Wrangell St. Elias range of Alaska. So this is, I think this is on day 2 of the first ascent of the west face of Salino Peak, which is like a 6,000 foot big steep technical thing in the Wrangell St. Elias.
So that's what I love about this, because I've liked a few 14ers when I live in Colorado, and it's not always about the altitude, because like you could just look at this terrain. I mean, you got some good gnarly technical stuff here, man. It's
yeah. I mean, the thing. So as an athlete in the climbing realm, the thing that really gets me going these days is things that haven't been climbed before, are really steep and really hard, and are in remote big mountains. And big does not mean 8,000 meter peaks. I mean, most of those mountains are crawling with people. They're covered in fixed ropes and things like that. But
Everest
for
is a
instance,
mess.
yeah, and I mean, it's like, and if that's the experience you want, is to go climb the highest peak on the planet, and that's great. I mean, it's like, for sure, it's an endurance feat and all that, but like, it's not exploratory. It's not, and it's not really wilderness experience. Whereas we spent the whole summer in the Pakistani Karakoram trying the east face of Linksar, which is an unclimbed 7,000 meter peak, and
it was unclimbed before you guys attempted it.
Yeah, I think that our expedition was the 9th expedition to try it, and we made the first descent, which was sweet. And it was really hard, and it was, it was like this amazing exploratory wilderness experience with like some of my some of my best friends. These guys, it's like these guys who I climb with, I have to trust them so much. It's like, so it's a super outstanding experience. And then it's really, to kind of connect that into the whole content and filmmaking and podcasting realm. I really got into content creation and filmmaking and writing and things like that because I really wanted to share these experiences I was having. And I really felt like, how do I put this? I felt like, like we have a choice of what we do with these experiences, and we can keep them to ourselves, and that's what we want. That's great. But for me, it creates a lot of value in the climbing that I do and the resources that I put into it, the time and money that I put into it. If I can share that and utilize that as a tool to encourage others to do what they want to do. And that was kind of the root of why I got into content creation, particularly around climbing. And that is grown and bridged out to a whole variety of different, different projects and things that I've worked on, some of which have, not very much to do with climbing, but it's all about storytelling and portraying information and inspiring people to, do cool shit and have a great relationship with our Mother Earth and go out and have fun and be good and be well and all that.
Well, the one thing I liked that you threw in there was, before the doing cool shit, which I'm totally up on, is your earlier point on surrounding yourself with the right people and building that trusting relationship. And, part of Live the Fuel means, actually it's an acronym, Fired Up Epic Life, live the fired up epic life. And because I created that after I spent years using somebody else's famous quote from Ernest Hemingway, which is live life to the fullest. And I used that as I kept growing my adrenaline junkie background and the sports and like racing mountain bikes, and then slowly getting into climbing, which I didn't have a clue about that until I finally moved to Colorado. And my roommates were both, backcountry mountaineers. So it's like, you couldn't have asked for better dudes to get to know and to bond with. And you're all right, dude. Like, you're the nervous feeling of, setting your first sport route, let alone trad, and then let alone doing 14ers. All of that got easier if you kept training and working with your buddies. Like, these are people that you just connect with because you're risking your life with it. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting we're bringing this up right now. I have to connect it because I'm finishing my first book, and I'm not a writer, but now I am. But it's going to be about, So You Want to Be a Hotshot is going to be the title. And I'm giving all the proceeds, to nonprofit. And once it goes out there, but I have a chapter in that titled Brotherhood. And there's that brotherhood. I mean, would you word it any differently? I call it brotherhood. It could be sisterhood too. There's some badass female climbers, man.
Oh yeah.
There's girls who are just like spider monkeys.
Non-gender specific term. Because we're supposed to. But brotherhood, sisterhood, humanhood. I'm all in. Yeah, it's like,
it's all bounded. I mean, there's some girls I've climbed with, man, that they're like spider monkeys, man. You could not even peel them off the wall if you wanted to. So I told him, I mean, I'm married now. I just got married in March, but I told my wife, I'm like, dude,
congratulations.
Thank you. Because she actually does at least half of the stuff that I do. And she's super cool and super smart. She's an equine horse vet doctor. And she's really into the triathlons. Whereas I'm, she'll go skydiving with me, but she doesn't really love the mountain bike. But when we first started dating, I was like, hey, you want to go climb some routes? And she's like, yeah. She's like, oh, I got a harness and shoes. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to like go buy you a harness or shoes. You're at least halfway there. I was like, this is perfect.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, but part of that brotherhood, sisterhood, the bonding, it does take you to a more spiritual level. And is that something that you like to tie into like your filmmaking and everything else? Is that a big fuel for the fire, so to speak?
Like that partnership I mean, for sure. And I think that, a lot of this, to kind of link this back to what we were talking about earlier, we were talking about how making the Wildfire podcast it's Jim and I as co-hosts, and then our dear pal and editor, Evan. And it's all about creating a team. Right. And so, climbing is, for me, it's like, it's so on the nose. It's just like we are, our lives are in each other's hands in such a literal way. And I love that. And it's great for storytelling. It's something I really enjoy personally and all that. But I think it applies, across the board with all things that we do. I mean, I think that whether we're going to talk about fighting fires or climbing mountains or solving the climate crisis or whatever, we're all in this together, and we all have to operate together as a team. We are so much more effective together than we are apart. And I think that's just, I think that's a really important component with just about anything. And I think it's something that I really try to work on in everything that I do.
No, I'm loving this, man. I mean, and for the listeners, I'm screen sharing again as he and I are wrapping, because the other site that will be linked on the website too is bedrockfilmworks.com. And since you said team, I had to go click on the team, and there's, obviously Jim and you got a nice little bio on each of you guys. So for people who super geek out like I do about outdoorsy nuts and everything else, I always want to make sure people can track this information down and easily find it. That's why we make sure we link everything on livethefuel.com, because there's no question then. But since I'm already here, what's up with the documentary section of the site here? So you guys are obviously niched in this.
Well, I think that, documentary refers to telling true stories, right?
Yes.
Documentary.
It's supposed to.
That's fair.
There's a few out there that aren't.
I mean, and all storytelling probably involves some embellishment or some leaving things out. But like documentary, as I see it, is nonfiction storytelling, particularly in the film or video format. And that's really, as a company, what we specialize in. And that's something that Jim is a climber as well. He's also gone to film school and is an amazing storyteller. So that's what we work on. We do a lot of commercial work as well, but we really, even in that work, try to ensure that story and some kind of documentary component is a big part of, what we're crafting.
Okay.
And it's just, stories and people and what people are doing. It's just so potent that it's just, and there's so much of it to get at that it's really, it's just something that we've gravitated towards.
Well, I agree with that, because it's funny, because like I'm on they have a commercial section of their site, ladies and gentlemen, at bedrockfilmworks.com. But it's funny because I'm a gearhead. If because I'm a big green nut too. I'm all about recycling and being clean and try and leave nothing behind. Even when I do our trail work at the mountain biking, the park we take care of, we try and keep, I can't stand when I show up one day and somebody decided to cut a whole new trail. I'm like, dude, minimal footprint. Okay. You can enjoy the outdoors. You don't need to be cutting 3 trails to go the same way. What are you doing? But I like the section of your site because that's how I connect when I purchase gear. Like, I know that when I buy a quick draw or a beaner or something, like, it's going to stand the test of time, right? You're going to pay a little bit more upfront. Great companies like Patagonia who care about their footprint. On your site, looks like you've done stuff with Thermarest, own it. Petzl, own it. REI, obviously I'm a member. So it's funny because like that's how I connect with my gear purchases. And I'm a sales and marketing professional. So I like to cycle that in just quickly from a business standpoint on the show, because people like, it's not just about selling stuff. If you share a great story and people see how a product or service can apply through a beautiful storyline, you've done all the sales and marketing you need. It doesn't have to be forced.
No, we want to buy real stuff from real people, and that's and we want to see people utilizing it authentically, and it matters
and especially
a lot.
when you got some of your documentaries, some of your stories, like, you got, Petzl products being used for fire, you got it used for the outdoors. And I love outdoorsy niche companies because most of them, especially the top end ones, do care about their footprint on the planet. They do care about usually the sustainability that goes into the design and manufacturing of their products. And that's something that I just learned over the years as I've dug deeper and deeper into different sports. And now I guess I purposely will spend extra time researching a company before I buy something. Yeah. I want to make sure I'm partnering. I call it partnering and connecting with a company who gives a shit.
It's really important. I mean, that's being a conscious consumer, right? And it's, and I mean, to be frank, it's a lot easier in the outdoor industry than a lot of other industries. But yeah, I mean, it's super important to understand the products that we're buying, where they come from, because that's a big part of how we drive change, right?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, you got to, again, find the right companies. I mean, this is, I'll go ahead and preach it. People hearing this, like, that's a state, like, just pause. Like, I know Amazon's huge now here in the United States, but I got people who listen to this stuff all over the world. And it doesn't matter if you're in Europe, if you're in Mexico, you're in Canada, you're in Argentina, depending on what you have access to, slow down, take a peek. Do you even need it? There you go. Like, okay, well, I haven't broken that yet or destroyed that yet, so it still works. So I don't really necessarily have to get it. And don't get me wrong, I'm a gearhead, but I do not get a new mountain bike unless I crack the frame. I get a little aggressive with my mountain biking, and yes, I've cracked 2 mountain bike frames over the years, but I got a lot of usage out of them before that happened. So
yeah. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, it's funny, like as a professional athlete, I get a lot of gear sent in the mail. But I do everything I can to make sure it doesn't go to waste. If I have, I also try to, like, not have too much stuff, because I think part of living an examined life is not having too much stuff lying around.
Oh, you'll appreciate that then. I got to pause on that. I have a minimalism section in that book. So because I went from a 2,000 square foot townhouse that I had here on the East Coast when I was a corporate guy to I bought a 1999 Subaru Outback wagon that I already had like 180,000 miles on it. Bought it for like $3,000 cash. And I said, okay, if my life doesn't fit in this car or on it, I get rid of it. And that's how I moved out to be a firefighter. I had, my mountain bike, my road bike on the roof. I had the skis in the interior. And then I had, I think, one of every size of the North Face Base Camp duffel bags. And then I had one mountaineering pack. And I said, okay. So the funny thing was, I got rid of almost everything except for, like, my gear. So I had a duffel bag for skiing. I had a duffel bag for the camping. I had a duffel bag for rock climbing. So I think my actual personal clothing fit in one bag.
Oh, yeah.
So you could probably appreciate that. And I still have that bag system in my garage to this day. Like, I have everything separated because I that's how I track the volume. I'm like, okay, I've got enough gear. I don't need anything else. It doesn't need to go. I don't want to have too much stuff. So I just want to pause on that. So.
Oh, no, it's important. As somebody who, used to live in his car also, it is a great foundation for making sure that you don't acquire too much stuff.
It's also great when I traveled across the country like 4 times. So I've done more, continental US travel than international travel. Whereas now I'm actually doing the international travel now. But I said, well, the beauty of everything fitting in your car is if I just want to pull over and go climb a route, I'm good to go. Or, let's take the bike off route and go rip some trail. So, and because of the bag system, I just drug a bag out of the way, grabbed that bag out, and, it was perfect. Like, you want to pull over and camp, everything was ready to go out of the car. So, I loved it. It was great.
Oh yeah, me too. I know, live in a house, which is also nice.
But I have a house now too. We all grow up sooner or later, but we can still tie those life lessons into this. And it sounds like you and I, even though I have a house now and I'm married, I'm always reminding, okay, what's excess? Can I check myself? And I didn't think like that years ago. I needed to change how I was living, how I was surrounding myself with people. And you could still live a rich and full life and not have crap everywhere.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think it's a really important component. It's also just like, clutter is stress. And
yes, it is.
Stress is not that sweet.
Thank you. Bring that up from a psychological standpoint. Yes, well said. It is. When I look forward, probably every month or two, I'll find like a couple of T-shirts, because when I go to sporting events and races or whatever, like you get like a souvenir shirt or whatever. I'm like, okay, do I need this many T-shirts? No. So I'll put together a bag and go to Goodwill or Salvation Army, because somebody else can benefit from these clothes that I'm not even wearing. So
totally.
It's literally a monthly cycle. That way I never have excess, and I feel so good not having, clutter.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. So what's next for you, man? We're coming towards the end of the show. We've got, I'm happy we're able to like align our schedules, because I know you're busy and you're getting out there, and you being a pro athlete and climber, like, dude, you get some epic travels. But I'm definitely a follower of your site and on your social feeds now, and obviously I can't wait for the next chapter of Wildfire to come out. But what else is happening next for you?
Well, let's see. So, for me, I spend a lot of time working on balance in life, and to put it bluntly, this past summer, well, how about this? I always, it's always a balance between, my family, which is my wife and my dog, and
same here,
and
wife and dog. That's it.
Oh yeah, Dink Wads, dual income, no kids with a dog, and then the running Bedrock Film Works, and being a political advocate, and then climbing. And it's like I'm never going to do all of those well at any given moment. And this last summer, I was out being a really great climbing athlete. We did this big hard thing. We spent all summer on it. It was awesome. And so coming up, I'm going to be like doing a lot of work with Bedrock, and a lot of political advocacy work as well.
Nice.
In the primarily in the climate space. I'm on the athlete team with Protect Our Winters, which is an organization that I've been super fired up to be working with for a while. And I think,
well, you're wearing the shirt today, so
I'm wearing the shirt. Oh yeah.
There you go, POW people.
Oh yeah, and so that's so working on the next season of Wildfire, working on a lot of the kind of some other content projects, and then also like spending a lot of time getting politically involved and trying to drive systemic change in our country so that we can deal with the climate crisis. That's a lot of
I think that's great. I mean, yeah. That's one thing I do like about the POW, here, hold on, for that video feed, because let's give them a little video shot as we bring the show to a close. So there they are. It is protectourwinters.org. I spent 11 years as a USSA ski race coach. So trust me, when I know about this site, and I've always been a donor to it. The climate shift that's happened in Colorado, and how the winters have shifted so much, and to your point earlier in the show about wildfires and everything else, it's cool to see how an organization like this has actually grown in such a positive way. And they've done it, I think, smartly, cleanly, because when you get into, we don't talk a lot about politics on the show, but my only suggestion to people is, if you're going to get into it, like, be smart, be tactile. Don't get into this explosive, stuff that's distracting. Like, make it impactful. Make sure there's heart behind it. Make sure you got the right people on the team, the right athletes. I didn't even realize they actually had an athlete team. How am I missing that? Because actually, I think, these guys, Protect Our Winters is always supported with the every year, because we're such huge skiers. We start the season off, a kickoff, as a film guy. You'll appreciate this, with a Warren Miller movie. So, So in a week and a half, we'll have our local spot here in PA for the Warren Miller flick, and we all buy our tickets ahead of time. We all donate, and it's a big, like, there's 20, 25 of us all go out and watch the movie to kick the season off. So. And I believe Protect the Winters is always promoted in those movies. So I think
that's true. Yeah, I think we work a lot with both Warren Miller and Teton Gravity Research.
Yep.
And it's pretty cool. And I think one of the big things that we're working on right now is encouraging people that kind of imperfect advocacy is okay, because that's like a big, we think about politics. Politics are hard. Politics are this thing where you have to be a perfect example of being a climate advocate to even talk about it. And it's not really the case. Like, it's like there are so many different ways to get involved. It doesn't mean being aggressive. It doesn't mean like knowing everything about all the candidates that are up for, in the primaries or whatever. It's like, it's all about being using your personal story to explain to others why it matters to you, and more importantly, explain to your your public representatives. So,
no, well said. And hold on, I got to do one more time. There he is. I found the team. You're under the the POW climb section. So actually, they have I think it's called Climb Alliance, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
POW Climb.
There it is. I didn't know Adrian was on there.
Yep.
Yeah, you guys. Yeah, you're aligned with some good people, man.
Oh yeah, we've got some great folks on the team. It's awesome.
Yeah, Emily's a spider monkey. I've seen some of her stuff.
Oh, yeah.
This is awesome. I'm a little jealous. So this is awesome. Anyway, I was hinted we're coming to the end of the show. We're going to have all this stuff linked in the show notes like we've always done, ladies and gentlemen. So again, if you had to take one action today, maybe it's going to visit protectourwinners.org. Maybe you want to learn more about, their filmmaking and stuff. So obviously go back and check out, bedrockfilmworks.com. You want to learn more about Graham, go to grahamzimmerman.com. You want to listen to a kick-ass podcast for the second season about to launch, go watch Wildfire. Listen to Wildfire. But as we close the show out, Graham, I asked my guest co-host, I don't really preview it because I know you're going to have some inspirational words from your lifestyle, but I ask you guys just to help me close it out. Like what's a closeout statement, final words that you just want to leave behind to people listening out there? And this is something bigger than just your brand, right? This could be an all-encompassing message behind everything that you're trying to do in the world. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that everything that I'm working on these days is, both in terms of myself and what I want to portray to others is all about, being bold, being safe, and being smart. And really, thinking about like what you do and the influence that you have on those around you to just be working on creating the kind of world that we want to live in. And it's kind of that simple. So that's what I would love to encourage you, Scott, and all your listeners to do.
Well, I need to have some good words, and that's just it. It doesn't need to be long. It needs to be short, sweet, and to the point, and you nailed it. So I like that. We need to surround ourselves with the right people and make, strong, impactful decisions that can make positive things for our future. So some great influence, some great words. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, Scott, thank you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Hang tight. I want to give you a proper goodbye off the air. Ladies and gentlemen, I dropped all the sites. We dropped all the names. The guy's got a lot going on. If you're a geek about rock climbing or mountaineering, definitely follow him and his fellow athletes from Protect Our Winners. Again, some great final words to leave behind. So remember, ladies and gentlemen, we're here to fuel your health, your business, and your lifestyle. Graham definitely helped us do it today. Make sure you subscribe to his Wildfire Podcast. And remember, you too can live the fuel. We'll talk to you guys again soon.